All right, so let's take a look at 13 through 15. So 13, it says determine the kind of quadrilateral that we have here. So instead of going through and trying to figure out and eliminating each one, we can go through and figure out which one it cannot be. So here's what I mean. So for example, in order for it to be a square, it would have to have both properties, rectangle and a rhombus. So the better thing to do is figure out, can it be a rectangle or can it be a rhombus? And so remember what was special about a rectangle. In order for it to be a rectangle, it has to have 4 right angles. So we're going to start there. So 4 right angles means 90 degrees. 90 degrees means perpendicular lines. Perpendicular lines means opposite reciprocal slopes. So we're going to take a look at 2 sides of this quadrilateral here and figure out, do these 2 sides have opposite reciprocal slopes? So the first thing is, we're going to find the slope of, we'll call it M, of BC. And so remember, finding slope is change in y over change in x. How many units did you change? So for my change in x, I went over 2 units. My change in y, how many units did we go up? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. Which simplifies down to 3. So in order for it to be a rectangle, the slope, we'll do it up here, the slope of AB would have to be opposite reciprocal of 3. The opposite reciprocal of 3 is negative 1/3. So if it is, then we have a possibility of being a rectangle. If it's not, we can eliminate square and a rectangle. So let's find out. So once again, is finding the slope is just change in y over change in x. So how many units did we go up? We went up 2 units. Change in x, how do we get from A all the way to B? So let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 units, which simplifies down to 1/7. So since the slope is 1/7 and not negative 1/3, we can already eliminate that it is not a rectangle, which means it's not a square. So now we have 2 possibilities. It's either a parallelogram or it's a rhombus. So remember, what was special about a rhombus is that it has 4 congruent sides. Now we can calculate it, or we can just very quickly see that it does not have 4 congruent sides, so we know it's not a rhombus. So now the only possibility is it a parallelogram? So one thing we can quickly check is, does it have 2 pairs of opposite sides that are congruent? That are parallel. So we can do that by calculating slope. We already found the slope of these 2. So now all we got to do is find the slope of the other 2 sides and see if they are the same as what we just calculated. And so let's go ahead and do that. So the slope of, let's call it AD. So M, slope of AD. Again, change in y over change in x. How many units did we go up? If we count, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units up, and 2 units to the right, which gives me a slope of 3. So far, so good. And so then we also have to find the slope of DC. Once again, change in y over change in x. 2 over, if we count, 14 units, which gives me a slope of 1/7. So here we can conclude that it is a parallelogram. 14, it says find the intersection of the diagonals. Okay, so remember, the diagonals is going to go from one vertex to the opposite vertex and vice versa. So we can simply just draw our diagonals and see where they intersect, which is right there. And so that's point 0, 3. So they intersect at 0, 3. I should probably put it was a parallelogram. Okay, last one, find BC. So BC is asking you find the distance of BC. To find the distance, remember, it's change in x squared, change in y squared. Luckily, we already did that. So the distance of BC, we found our change in y when we were finding the slope, and we found our change in x once again when we were finding the slope. And so really all I'm going to do is substitute those values in to find the distance, and then we simplify. So the change in x was 2 units. Our change in y was 6 units. So mental math. 2 squared is 4. 6 squared is 36. And so we're going to leave it as a distance to be 40. Or the square root of 40, sorry. Alright, so let's move on. Now we're going to questions 16 through 20. And so question number 16 through 18, they're telling you use the rectangle. So we already know it's a rectangle. That means all the properties, even the special ones, of a rectangle apply here. So they're telling you that WY, so this entire diagonal here, is 19. Well, remember, diagonals of a rectangle are congruent. So if that's 19, that means the x is also 19. Next question. They're telling you if WY is 19, then what is WT? WT goes from here to here. So remember, the diagonals, not only are they congruent to each other, but they bisect each other. So if the whole thing is 19, WY is 19, then half of that would be WT. So we can write it one of two ways, 19 halves, or what's half of 19 as a decimal is 9.5. Next question, it says if Tx, so I'm going to erase that. So they're telling you if Tx is 4.5, so Tx is 4.5 or 4.5, then what is Wy? So remember, because they are all congruent, and I know half of one is 4.5, this other half is also 4.5, which makes the entire thing 9, which means, or sorry, the entire diagonal is 9, which means WY is also 9. So that's it using that diagram. Sorry. Moving on to 19, it says rectangle GALS. So the first thing I'm going to do is draw myself a rectangle and label it GALS. And so now it's telling you diagonal GL, so this diagonal here, and AS. Okay, so two diagonals. They're telling you if GL is 3A plus 6 and AS is 5A minus 18, find GL. So if you notice, the two pieces of information, GL and AS, both represent your diagonals, GL, AS. And since we know diagonals are congruent, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to set those two equations equal to each other and solve for A to begin with. So we have 3A plus 6 equals 5A minus 18. Solve for A. Solve for A by subtracting 3A on both sides, and we're also going to add 18 on both sides. On the left side, 3A cancels. On the right side, 18 cancels. 5A minus 3A gives me 2A. And 18 plus 6 gives me 24. Divide by 2, and I get an A value of 14. Now, that's important. That's not my answer. That's important because they're asking me to find GL. GL was given to me as 3A plus 6. At the moment, I didn't know what A was, but I just found out what A is. And so I'm going to substitute my value of A in for A. So we have GL is equal to 3 times A, which we just found to be 14. And we're going to add 6. And so 3 times 14 multiply, that gives me 48. 2, add 6, gives me GL to be 48. Alright, so now we're moving on to question 20. It says rectangle of boys, or BOYS. So first thing I'm going to do is draw myself a beautiful rectangle and label it BOYS, and they're telling you BY and OS. So BY and OS are two diagonals that intersect at point X. So X is there, and it says XOB, or angle XOB is 70, so we have 70 degrees there. And then it says, what is the measurement of angle YSO? So YSO, so this angle here, and BSO. BSO, this angle there. So one thing to remember is, one, properties of a parallelogram still apply because a rectangle can be classified as a parallelogram, which tells us that these two angles are going to be alternate interior. And so here the measurement of angle YSO is also going to be 70 degrees. And remember, one of the special properties of a rectangle is that we have right angles at every corner. And so if I know that one of the measurement is 70, and they're supposed to add up to 90, all I got to do is subtract 70 from 90, and it gives me my other measurement, which is the measurement of angle BSO degrees.